Hey everybody, I'm Jane, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to create false suspects for your mystery novel and build them out into characters who can impact the plot. On the agenda today, we're going to be dealing with 3 different ways we can create suspects. We're going to talk about the 5 things your suspects need in order to be fleshed out, and we're going to deal with that old question about how many suspects are right for your book. The first way to create suspects is to create suspects who showcase your hook. So in the case of a cozy mystery, and that's what I write, the hook is the world the book inhabits, whether that's the world of an industry like the florist industry or maybe a historical world like Prohibition era Chicago. So one way to start creating suspects is simply to write down character types who would be prominent in the world you're writing about and would showcase different aspects of it. So let's say that we're writing a cozy mystery about a florist. Well, we might say our suspects are going to be someone who breeds rare orchids, maybe a landscape architect. Ooh, maybe a sexy one. And let's say maybe a bridezilla who has to have the perfect flowers for her wedding. Then let's talk about Prohibition era Chicago. Okay, we might write down some roles like flapper, bootlegger, thug. And then the first step of fleshing these out is just to add an interesting or surprising adjective to each one. So let's do that with our Chicago characters. Right now we've got an aging flapper, a charming bootlegger, and a repentant thug. These are actually 3 of my suspects from my first novel, The Black Rose Murders. If you're doing this exercise, you would probably want to go on a little more. You'd want to have more than just 3 options. And this is only the first step of putting the characters together. We are going to add more flesh to them down the line. But just with this first step, you've got enough to start imagining what their motives might be and thinking up cool scenes that might revolve around them. Another way that you might go about thinking up suspects is to start from your victim and figure out the people he needs to have around him in order to make his life work. So let's say our victim in this mystery novel is going to be an aging, best-selling author. Well, who are the characters who would inevitably people his life? Well, people often have family members, so it makes sense for those characters to be around. A daughter, a wife, a nephew. And since he's an author, he probably has some publishing people in his life. A publisher, an agent, maybe a rival author. And since he's elderly, there might also be a doctor or a nurse around. And then we can just play our adjective game again. Now we have a bitter daughter, a greedy agent, a heartless nurse. By figuring out the characters who have to be around in order for our victim's life to be fleshed out, we find a treasure trove of potential suspects. And each time we add another aspect to our victim's life, well, we're going to add more characters to his community. So let's say that he likes to start his writing day every morning at the same coffee shop. Well, this is going to add characters to his milieu. Now he's got perhaps a favorite barista, the owner of the shop, maybe a pair of young entrepreneurs who like to work at the next table. Anyone who he's going to encounter on a regular basis is a potential character for us to build out into a suspect. And the last way that you can create suspects is to start with motive. So let's take that elderly best-selling author and figure out a few reasons people might want to kill him. Well, he's rich, so there's obviously the inheritance motive, always a classic in mystery novels. Someone could also want to kill him to keep a particular book from being written or from being published. And why else would someone want this guy dead? What else goes with writer? Well, fans go with writers, plagiarism goes with writers. Yeah, okay, I love that. Let's say someone wants this guy dead because he's a dirty, rotten plagiarist. We are going to take these 3 possible motives and then we're going to use them to come up with 3 suspects. For the inheritance motive, we give him a son who can never seem to get his life together and needs money fast. What about preventing him from writing something? Well, to me, this suggests a fear motive. Someone from a writer's past fears that his secrets are going to be revealed in the next book. That suggests the murderer and the writer shared a shameful episode years ago. Maybe they participated in a crime together that our sleuth is going to have to dig into and figure out. And as for our plagiarism motive, well, we're going to need a reason why our character had a long-standing career as a best-selling writer but is only getting caught for plagiarism now. Maybe it's just his most recent book that was plagiarized, or actually, maybe it's just the first. Maybe he plagiarized something written by a writing student of his long ago, and it was so good that it launched his career and put him in the spot where he is today. The suspect in that case would be the original writer or maybe her child, which makes a little more sense. You'd expect the actual writer to have learned about the plagiarism long ago and exposed him, but if she was dead, in fact, possibly if she was killed, by our author in order to steal her book, well, then her son might just now be learning about this after going through some of his mom's old papers. That would be a terrific suspect, someone who would first appear in the book under another guise as our author's assistant or gardener or young friend, and we wouldn't learn their true history and motive until later. Thumbs up if you're liking this video so far, and then let's talk about the suspect spreadsheet that's going to help you build all of these characters out. First things first on our spreadsheet, every suspect is going to need a potential motive. So even if it was a physical clue or something circumstantial that first turned us onto a particular suspect, before we can really get suspicious, we are going to have an explanation for why they might have done it. We already have motives for our last set of suspects, but let's take a look at one of our earlier sets. We created these suspects who might do in our elderly author a bitter daughter, a greedy agent, a heartless nurse. Well, that bitter daughter, so what's her motive going to be? It could be something simple and financial. She knows that once her dad's out of the picture, she'll inherit his fortune. How about our greedy agent? Well, he can have the same motive. Perhaps he expects to be remembered in the author's will. It's perfectly fine for several suspects to share the same potential motive, and this is often the case, especially in mysteries with a black-hearted victim who is doing harm to a lot of different characters, or in mysteries that revolve around an important event like the disbursement of a fortune or the sale of a business, something that a lot of people expect to benefit from. But just for kicks, let's give this guy something different. Let's say that the author's latest manuscript is terrible, it's unpublishable. He's lost his mojo, okay? The agent doesn't want him to run his ongoing series into the ground, and he knows that the author's backlist is gonna get a bump in sales if he dies under mysterious circumstances. Now let's talk about our heartless nurse. Perhaps she has a secret the author has found out about, something in her past that she doesn't want exposed. Maybe she isn't actually a nurse at all. Maybe she killed the woman who was supposed to take this nursing position and assumed her identity to hide from some dark incident in her past. Well, that would actually go a long way toward explaining why she's a nurse who's curiously lacking in compassion. The next thing on our spreadsheet is that every suspect needs to have desires. So whether or not they actually wanted to kill the victim, they want something, even if it's just to be left alone in the life they've already built. So take a moment to think about what each suspect really wants out of life right now, because this is the kind of information that's going to come out when your sleuth is talking to them and try and figure things out. Maybe they want a career change. They may want to win someone's love. They may want to pull off some big business deal. One very frequent suspect desire is to keep a secret. So often on the way to the big reveal at the end of the book, we'll give our readers a few little reveals, learning the secrets of the suspects. These secrets can run the gamut from totally sweet and innocent, like being in love with another character and not being ready to tell them, to totally dark and criminal, such as a character who intended to kill the victim but just wasn't able to do so before the real murderer got there first. Now, I'm not going to tell you that every suspect has to have a secret. I don't really like to use this spreadsheet to methodically tick through every suspect, building them all out the same, because I don't want every subplot revolving around a suspect to feel the same to the reader. And thinking of suspects as subplots it's kind of a convenient way to think of them. Each suspect is essentially a subplot that is raised when we ask the question, did this person commit the murder? And is closed off and resolved when we figure out exactly what's going on with that suspect and clear them of the crime. So we're going to talk a little bit more about suspect subplots in a video on red herrings later in this series, but for now, just know that while it is not necessary for every one of your suspects to have a secret, it's very common for at least a few of them to have some skeleton in their closet that they don't want getting out. This gives them a reason to act cagey, fueling our sleuth suspicions, and it provides some little surprises for your reader to enjoy on the way to the big finale. Another thing suspects need is a way of responding to your sleuth. So when the sleuth starts asking your suspect questions, is he going to be frightened, offended, contemptuous, maybe vengeful? I feel like it can be useful to write the responses of each suspect down in the planning process and give them a little variety so that I don't wind up hitting the same emotional notes in every single suspect interview. And if you're having trouble figuring out what their emotional responses will be, well, I think a helpful exercise is to look at some characters from a favorite TV show and ask, how would each of these characters react if they were accused of murder while sitting on a big secret that they don't want coming out? Let's just do this with a few of the characters from Downton Abbey. So Lord Grantham would be outraged and offended. Miss O'Brien would be outwardly accommodating, but behind that, she'd be coldly furious and vengeful. And Daisy would be terrified and flustered. Now, I am not suggesting that you base your characters on existing fictional characters. That would be unethical and it wouldn't even be very fun. But doing a simple exercise like this, well, it can help you quickly generate a lot of potential ways that people might react to being investigated, and maybe one of those will work for your characters. And the last thing that we're going to give our suspects is a strategy for keeping their secret. If they've got something to hide, and again, not everybody has to, but if they do, how are they going to try to get the sleuth off the scent? Again, let's just do this with our Downton characters just so we have a host of ideas to work with. Lord Grantham would probably use his elevated social rank to try and shut the sleuth down. Miss O'Brien would immediately start scheming behind the sleuth's back to get her out of the picture, and Daisy would probably panic and do something wildly foolish like starting a fire to try to get the sleuth to give up and go home. So all of these can provide rich opportunities for scenes that can be frightening or funny. Not every suspect needs to react this strongly to having their secret threatened. Now, just as I said before, you don't want every subplot revolving around a suspect to feel identical, so you're probably not going to have each of them react that strongly and really go to war with your sleuth. In fact, you'll probably want to save your very best ideas in this area for the murderer himself, who obviously has the best reason to try and get the sleuth's investigation shut down. But just considering each character's potential strategy during the planning process can give you a lot of options to work through as you're plotting your book. All right, here's the question that everyone asks when it comes to suspects. How many suspects do you need? Well, I'd like to be able to just give you a straight up definitive answer, but the fact is, I think it depends on the type of book you're writing. For a nice traditional mystery set in an English manor house or something similar, probably 5 to 6 suspects is a good rule of thumb. You can go a little higher, a little lower, but 5 to 6 is good because it's low enough that your reader can keep all the suspects straight in his mind, and it's high enough that we have lots of little puzzles to work out as we investigate each character. For a book that leans less toward pure mystery and more towards thriller or suspense, you can get by with fewer suspects because you're going to be spending less time on cerebral investigation and more time on navigating dangers and exploring psychological tensions. And if you're writing a whodunit, that is a mystery where the primary question revolves around how the murder was committed, such as in a locked room murder, well, you actually only need one. In my next video, I'm going to be going in deep on red herrings, digging into how the sleuth initially begins suspecting a character and then how they clear them of suspicion. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. If you don't want to miss it, be sure to hit the red subscribe button. Thanks for watching.